Okay, we are going to start. Thank you all for arriving until the end of this second day of Mission Conference. This last session of the day is reducing emission while bracing for impact, the role of the city. Actually, this session is being proposed by the city of Helsinki. That seems like they was foreseeing this heat wave weather here in Turin that make us think that actually our action need to be fast and need really to work together from the adaptation and the mitigation side, going in the same direction, because cities are already suffering for this kind of very extreme climate events, and they're happening more and more often. So actually, city needs to react somehow. I would like to give the floor before starting to Ina Oilinki, who actually proposed the topic of this session. So actually, you can share with us the idea of opening the discussion about this topic.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Ina. I'm from the climate unit of the city of Helsinki. And yes, like Isabella said, we proposed this theme for the conference because it's something that we are keenly thinking about in Helsinki. So in our case, do I have to go one more? So we've been working with climate mitigation for the past 9 years as a strategic target for the city. So we have an 85% mitigation target for 2030, and we are now around 55% reduction, and we will get quite close to our target by 2030. So we are doing a lot with mitigation, but we have not been as active with adaptation, maybe because we are a cold Nordic city, and it took a while to understand that the climate change things are also affecting us. Last summer, we had over 30 consecutive days of over 25 degrees, which is something that doesn't happen in that far north usually. So we are getting more understanding about what climate change is also doing to our city and how much the heat waves and storms are starting to affect the population. So we've started to think that the mitigation actions and the adaptation actions have to be thought together so that we are not working on one sector while forgetting the other. So we have different reasons for thinking this. First of all, of course, climate change is an urgent matter, and we cannot do more harm by not mitigating, but we at the same time have to think about how do we adapt to the changes. Then it's also about a shared space in a city where we are doing, so whether we are greening things or putting more trees somewhere or something like that, while the city is growing quickly, so it's densifying the city, which might be something that's not good for adaptation while it's good for mitigation. So we have to think about these things. And we also need to build for future-proof cities. So what we are building now needs to be something that's still good for 50 years from now. So how do you build in a city so that you are not making solutions that are not usable anymore in 50 years. So we don't have the solutions here. We are more asking for cities that have also thought about this, and this was the reason for having this theme here, so that we get to hear what others are saying. But my colleague Susanna will talk more about what we are doing in Helsinki.
Indeed. Thanks, Ina. Actually, now we will listen to the experience of some city. We will start with Susanna Kankampa from Helsinki. Then we will follow with Kistans, Amsterdam, Mons Hernandez from Zaragoza, Trude Rauken, Oslo. And then we will have the honor also to have Philippe Froissart with us from European Commission, and Milenko Selder from Eritrea. Let's start with the experience of Helsinki. And thanks, Susanna, for staying with us.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me to this great conference, City Contributions. And yes, Susanna is my name, and Kankampa, which is quite impossible, the last name. And I also work with Ina in the Helsinki climate unit. And it's all about my presentation is about integration, adaptation and mitigation measures in the city of Helsinki. First, very shortly about the climate policies in the city. In the new and current Helsinki City strategy, there is what we call operational cornerstones on climate change, and they concern both mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation targets, like Ina said, already the emission reductions by 85%. And also the Helsinki has the target of being net zero carbon emissions by year 2040. And there's also policies or targets for adaptation in the current city strategy, including preparing for extreme weather events like heat, what Ina just mentioned. This is our new climate program, which is a draft still, but it's ongoing to the decision-making process shortly. Just to note, for this climate program, for the first time in the city of Helsinki, it includes both adaptation and mitigation. Previously, they've been in separate documents. So now, at least at the program level, we are dealing with both adaptation and mitigation. But going to our example of integrating adaptation and mitigation is a new detailed plan of Kaivokatu that was just recently this month of May, it was approved in the City Council. Kaivokatu is situated in the very center of Helsinki. That building you see in the picture is the main railway station in Helsinki. Kaivokatu is very sort of city-like car-oriented area in the city. Daily about 20,000 cars pass through Kaivokatu, and about 190,000 people use the public transportation in the area. But the new plan is going to change this all. There will be no cars, personal cars anymore, and it will be a green area for the citizens and for public transportation. So this is a very great change for the city of Helsinki, even though it doesn't seem like a big one, but this is a major decision here. Well, why transport? It is currently the biggest source of emissions in Helsinki, like Ina said. Our energy system has changed a lot, and it's not goal-based anymore, and therefore what remains is transport. Well, going back to the Kaivokatu area, the Kaivokatu is situated in a flood risk area in the city. Here you see two maps. The other one is showing the urban flood risks in a very currently rare type of flood, but which will come more what do you say? You have it more in the future. The other map is showing the sea flood areas. Inside those red lines is an area where you should not build anything anymore, because the sea flood, it is flooded when we have a sea flood incident. So here again, Kaivokatu is a sea flood area. Then we have mapped heat for Finland. Like Ina said, we are not very accustomed to heat in a Nordic country such as Finland. Well, here you can't see, but this is the city of Helsinki, and this is a very hot summer we had in 2021. And so we had heat everywhere in the city, and also the urban heat islands. But in the future, the summers will get hotter with climate change. By the mid-century, the heat will increase about 1 centigrade, and by the end of the century, you can see the map is getting very red and purple, which means it's getting hotter all the time. And the heat will be about 1.5 degrees hotter than it is currently. It doesn't maybe seem a lot for you for those of you who live in the southern parts of Europe, but for Finns this is very hot. Again, Kaivokatu, as you see from the map, it is very urban area with lots of surfaces, hard surfaces, and very little green. But here is the map and how it's going to change. There's no car traffic and some green areas, which is a great change for the city, for the center of Helsinki. Well, potential benefits for mitigation and adaptation for the change. Of course, it will reduce potentially the emissions because there will be no car traffic, and then there will be sustainable modes of transport. For adaptation, there will be more surfaces, permeable surfaces, which is good. And then there is a potential to add trees for those green areas. So it will be a great change. That clock is, yeah. Anyway, so a few more plans that are going to change the urban structure for more greens, especially the street areas. This is again Rickardin-katu in the center of Helsinki, and another area close to the center. So anyway, thank you, and this is from the main paper, Helsingin Sanomat, and saying of how the motorists will, even in the future, they think that Kaivokatu plan is not a great thing, even though we all others think it is a great change. Thank you.
Thanks, Susanna. Now we'll see the Amsterdam experience. Kees Stans, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Kees Stans with a T. I work in the energy department of the city of Amsterdam, and I'll be talking a little bit about how overlapping spatial claims influence the climate mitigation and adaptation policy in Amsterdam. So what you can see in Amsterdam, and I suppose in many of the cities in this room right now, is that there's a lot of ambition coming together. For example, in our Climate City contract, we describe one transition towards a sustainable energy system, but also different transitions like a healthy food system or a more climate resilient city. And at the same time, we also have non-climate related ambitions, such as growing the city or developing to a multi-court city. And those ambitions stack, and you can really notice that in the energy system. In Amsterdam, our demand for electricity transport capacity is projected to multiply by a factor of 3 to 4.5. Like you've maybe heard, the entire Netherlands is facing large electricity grid congestion issues, and Amsterdam is no exception in this regard. And this is not only due to electrification caused by the climate transition. 12% of our electricity demand increase is also caused by the new data centers being developed in the city, or by the new homes that we want to build. And what you also see is that we can't build all the electricity infrastructure in time, causing grid congestion. To give you a scale of the challenge we face, on the left of this slide you can see a box. It's 2 by 4 meters roughly, and we need to put about 2,600 of these boxes in our city in the coming years. And then on the right you can see projects that we are developing to develop more grid infrastructure on the high voltage levels. And this is just one example of a project we need to do about 40 times. And as you can imagine, these require a lot of space. And this is also where I think energy infrastructure influences other ambitions, like, for example, becoming a climate resilient city. These often collide in the space available in your city. On the left of this screen, again, you can see different instances of where public space faces challenges, and different ambitions may be hindered by other challenges that the city is also facing. And then on the right there, you can see where they meet in that same space. And to tackle this issue, you really need to think about designing your space more holistically, which in Amsterdam we developed several methodologies for that we're experimenting with or also implementing. And I think moving towards a more integrated spatial picture is really necessary in order to well, develop a design that works for everyone and enforces climate mitigation and adaptation. Then another important point where I think climate mitigation and adaptation meet each other and can reinforce or harm each other is if you're looking at the maintenance cycles of public space and the assets that you own as a municipality or other stakeholders in the city own. For example, in Amsterdam we need to transform about 500,000 streets to achieve our net zero objectives. And to do so, it will be easier if you connect the maintenance cycles of different assets in your public space, because if you do that effectively, you can create better solutions because you can design the different parts of your public space in coherence with each other. And there's also less hindrance from the works in public space for the citizens in your city. In Amsterdam, we're developing several products that enable us to do so. So, for example, we've developed a framework on public space design methodologies, which is available on our open research platform. And we're also working towards more integrated area development plans. And then on maybe a more abstract scale is a project I'm personally involved with. It's called the Vital Systems Approach. This is a project that TNO, it's well, an organization in the Netherlands, and also the municipality of Rotterdam is also implementing in their city. And the Vital Systems Approach is based on the assumptions that there are different systems necessary for a city to function, like the energy system, and there are different challenges that you need to tackle in your city, like the energy transition, or, for example, moving towards a more climate resilient future. And they're trying to make the employees and the systems of the city talk to each other in the same language by developing a shared language, and then setting up an advisory group where the different systems are represented and can talk to each other, and also the different challenges are represented. So, for example, the sustainability challenge or the resilience challenge in the context of security in Amsterdam, or maybe even climate adaptation or the circular economy. Moving towards a concrete example of how this vital system approach works in Amsterdam is this case, this case of finding a location for a 380 kilovolt substation, so a high voltage substation. On the left here on the screen you can see that with the vital systems approach we discovered that there are several areas that we're searching locations for this system that have flooding risks, which you don't want if you're building electricity infrastructure there. But we also wanted to expand the water treatment site there. It has large impacts on nature networks and the objectives of the nature restoration law, and therefore also on the green space in the city. It influences UNESCO World Heritage sites and production of renewable energy sources. So the high voltage station, several searching areas were also overlapping with places where we wanted to develop windmills or search for geothermal sources, or maybe even build a metro depot or develop more housing, which you don't want to put too close towards electromagnetic radiation. For now, this just provides this information and context towards the co-workers working to finding a location for the substation, and then they can use that in their advice towards the grid operator and the national government in finding a site. But maybe in a later stage, this can be more binding. What we also do in Amsterdam on an even more abstract scale is trying to update our long-term environmental policy. We developed a program called Atelier 2100, and that's basically a working methodology which enabled us to look towards the 21st, well, beyond the 21st century, to really take a look at the very long-term development of Amsterdam. And here on the screen you can see 4 different varieties in which Amsterdam might develop. They're not objectives of the city, they're just designs that help us think about what could happen in the future. And with that information you can do backcasting to see what projects would we need to do at what time to enable the most flexibility maybe in the choices that we make, or at what times are we too late to make certain decisions? So for example, there's an important sluice in the Netherlands, it's called the IJmuidensluis, and it's one that protects Amsterdam from flooding, and it needs to be invested in order to increase pumping capacity to make sure the city of Amsterdam doesn't flood, and also most of the neighborhooding cities in the neighborhood. And what you can see is that if you want to densify Amsterdam or increase the amount of inhabitants living in the city while not increasing the water buffering in the city, then you need to put in more pumping capacity. And a different challenge is also the salination of the soil that the city is built on, because once sea level starts to rise, there's more salt water moving in towards the city, which makes certain agriculture projects not possible anymore. And then, well, I see that I need to quit talking about the 22nd century, but there's many different problems, and thinking in the very long future helps you see them in the near future, and then you can make choices to anticipate upon them.
Thanks, Keith. Now we will see the Spanish city of Zaragoza experience. Montse Hernandez, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you to invite Zaragoza to join today in this session. And well, my name is Montse. I'm the head of the Environment, Climate Action and Public Health Department of the City Council of Zaragoza. Zaragoza is a city in Spain, in the northeast of Spain, between Barcelona and Madrid. We are a Mediterranean region with several problems of droughts and also floods. So we can see some examples. We think that there are 3 steps that are needed to a strategy of adaptation and mitigation. And there are commitments, there are plan and strategies, and there we need to the action. So we start with a little overview about commitments. We meet the European global objectives through the local commitments. So we have a strong long-term political commitment, and I want to highlight some of these key documents and these key initiatives in Europe, like Covenant of Mayors, that is very important for the cities, for the data and for the plans. We are working in this framework. Also the Green City Accord or the EU mission, of course. We are part of the 100 cities of the European Mission of Cities. And also, we have an adaptation plan that was approved by the local government in 2023. And, well, we have an ambitious objectives by 2030. I think that all the cities that are involved in this mission, we have the same objectives and aims. So this is our commitments, this is our local commitments, and then we need to plan to do these commitments. And this is necessary. This is necessary to plan for action. And well, we have a lot of documents, a lot of strategies, but I want to highlight several documents, like the roadmap to climate neutrality by 2030 in our city climate contract, our action plan, also the adaptation plan, and I want to highlight the green infrastructure strategy and NetZero solutions. We are going to talk about this now. And we are ongoing in 2 documents now we think that are important in the next future, that are the resilience strategy, an overview with to join adaptation, mitigation, and other measures, and also the air quality strategy, because it's very important in the city of Zaragoza. Only one question about the Green Infrastructure Master Plan. This was approved in 2017. And it allows us to identify all the areas we are going to work to connect our green infrastructure. So we study our territory and we identify more than 140 actions to do to improve our green infrastructure. And this is important because these documents allow us to give a work with the nature restoration law. So this is important. This is a very, very important document for the city. And then we do the action. The action, I want to present you 3 study cases of Zaragoza. The first we call as the Citizens Forest of Zaragoza. We want to plant 1 tree for each citizen of Zaragoza, so we are more than 700,000 citizens. So this is our objective by 2030. We are planted inside the city and outside the city in our territory. But the difference maybe with other urban initiatives in forest is that it's a collaborative project. In this project, we involve companies, we involve citizens, we involve schools, and this is a collaborative project to transform our city. And this is a climate action, a resilience, promote biodiversity, health, and green in our city. This is an overview that the model of governance of this project, and also we identify all the areas we want to work in the city and outside the city. And we have our documents to do this plan and to do this action. You have some examples. And as I said before, this is how we use our green infrastructure and our citizen of forest to integrate it in the nature restoration plan of Zaragoza and of Spain. This is an example. This is an area inside the city of Zaragoza. And this is the start of the action. We are working in a very, very, very degraded areas into the urban city. So we transform it by nature-based solution in this. This is a real photograph of our actions inside the city. This is our example. We do Miyawaki forest, and it's a kind of forest inside the city also. And the most important, this forest is done by people and for people. And this every weekend we go with people to plant their trees because they can to put money to this project, and they can plant their tree. So this is our action with people. The second study case, adapt your schoolyard. Then we change our project, and this is a project about to adapt the schoolyards of the public schools of Zaragoza to the climate change by nature-based solutions also. And this is also a collaborative project because we don't have the responsibility of the schools. It's a responsibility of the regional government. So we do an alliance with the government, and we start to work in the schoolyards. We need to select, we have about 80 public schools, so we only can put action in 5 schools per year. So we need to select 5 schools of 80, and we do it with criteria of vulnerability, climate vulnerability, and social vulnerability, with the temperatures, with the heat island, and also with social criteria to select these public schools. And this is an example of what we are doing in our public schools. This is another example, and also we use the new European Bauhaus criteria with the art as expression of the child. And the last, Zaragoza is crossed by 3 rivers, and this is the river that crosses inside our city. We start in the last year the restoration of our river in the city. So this is a big and ambitious project. We are restoring 2 kilometers into the city, and we have very problems to do this. And well, this is how we are restoring our river ecosystem, but also how to connect the river with the city. And this is a short video. This is our project. And the most important things, the lessons, citizen participation is critical. We need to involve citizens to transform the cities. High replication, we need to find models to replication, integrate climate adaptation pathways, strong strategies, a strong plan, and nature-based solution is the key. And also the replication and knowledge sharing with all of you, with all the cities, to climate resilient cities. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Montse. Now we are going back to the north, the case of Oslo, through the Rauken, please.
Thank you. I think we all need to go to Zaragoza for a study tour. But now we're going to stick with Oslo. So we're going to go back up north. I'm with the Department of Environment and Transport at City Hall as one of the senior advisors on climate. Anyways, so this is Oslo. We were founded around year 1000, so we're about 1,000 years old. We just passed 700,000 people, and we're expecting another 200,000 people in the coming 20 years, I think. We're part of a metropolitan area that is around 1.4 million people. And now we have this nice animation showing that it didn't become green. Hold on. Anyways, it doesn't show up on the map, but 2/3 of Oslo is forest. And the forest is protected by law, and we can't build there. So making room for more people needs to happen within the already urban zone. 75% of the people who live in Oslo own their own homes, and we have very low unemployment. That's Oslo in short. Some more context is our adopted climate targets that were adopted in 2020. By 2030, we're supposed to cut 95% of all our direct emissions. We are becoming climate resilient by the end of this century, but by 2030, we are going to be much better equipped to be able to handle the weather of today and also the weather of tomorrow, which is, I guess, is climate change, right? Then we have an energy target to reduce our energy consumption, which we desperately need to do because as we electrify everything, we're going to need to use our electricity for other things than heating our homes, for example. We're also going to sequester more carbon in both in the green areas in the built-up zone and in the forest, and we're going to substantially reduce our indirect emissions. But today we're talking about mitigation and adaptation together. So our biggest source of emission is, just like Helsinki, is road transport. So we are quite far along the way of electrifying all transport, including our public transport has been fully electrified. But we also, to make room for more people, we also need to reduce car traffic. And also to make room for more green infrastructure, which is definitely something that we need when you look at the impacts that Oslo is facing. Like a lot of northern European cities, we are facing more precipitation, more rainfalls, more heat waves, more urban flooding. Our forests are stressed by more and more unpredictable wind. And also our forest fire hazard is increasing. But the biggest challenge that we have, or the biggest impact, is extreme weather events in terms of heavy rainfalls. So in short, there's more rain more often. So that is our biggest challenge. And then, as Ina said, I'm happy to know that we're not the only ones who don't have all the solutions, but do have quite a few. Oslo is not built for more precipitation, more rain. We're in a bowl formation, so all the water makes its way down to the city center around City Hall. to go into the Oslo fjord. That is something that we're trying to avoid happening because we see that insurance payments are going up and there's just a lot of critical infrastructure. And also our sort of our emergency services are going to be inhibited by an urban flood. So we use nature-based solutions to hold back water. And that is what we're doing the most in the city right now. And I think what we are looking at, we're just like Helsinki was talking about, we're rethinking how we plan our cities. So we're planning the city more around nature, people, and sustainable mobility, and no longer around the car, which has been the case up until now. So this little girl is jumping across a reopened stream in an area called Ensjø, which has been transformed over the last 20 years. So let's take a closer look at Ensjø. So the stream you just saw her jumping across is the same that you're looking at in this picture from 2 different years. Back in 1959, it was considered smart to close off streams because then we would have more room for industry and we would have more room for urban development, and also the streams were heavily polluted. So it made sense to just close them off and let the pollution run into the Oslo fjord. Now the Oslo fjord is dying, and we need to bring life back into the fjord. But and also the rain, when the water will follow the old streams when it rains heavily. So reopening streams is really good adaptation, and is also really good urban development. It creates a much nicer city for our citizens. So in 1959, you see how the stream was being closed off, and in 2026, it has been reopened. And Ensjø used to be what we call the car city in Oslo. This is where you would go if you wanted to buy a new car. Over the last 20 years, the cars have gone out, both the dealerships and also the cars that on the streets. Still some cars, but not as many as before. And we made more room for people and nature. So on the left, all the way to the left, you see the picture from 1992. Very, very car-based, hardly any people. Moving then to 2009, you see one guy on a bike, and he's stuck in the middle of traffic. That is unsafe, and it creates and is a nuisance as a car driver to have. Just gets a lot of conflict. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. And then in 2026, we have lane separation. We have a nature-based solutions to sort of hold back water runoff, and still some room for the car, but less than before. So it used to be a car dealership part of the city. Now thousands of people live there and thrive there. And so we have kept our sort of focus on 2030. That's been sort of our main, that's the year that we're working towards. But with our climate budget, we are now looking beyond 2030. When we come to the 2028 budget, we will start looking into what happens beyond 2030. So now we need to revise our climate strategy, and we're going to look towards 2040. Still, we're going to have adaptation, mitigation, and nature together in the climate strategy. We don't know what it's going to look like because the Climate Agency is right now developing the technical knowledge report for the strategy. But we need to have a strategy that inspires action, just like we've had before, the one we have now. But we also need to have goals that are measurable so that we can use it in the climate budget, which is more than the annual action plan for our climate work. And so in a year from now, I hope I will be able to share with you our new climate strategy. Thank you.
Yeah, Now, thank you. Now I would like to ask to Philippe Frassard from European Commission.
You're not going to talk.
And then Milenko.
Well,
and
okay, so that's the reversed order, but that's fine.
Exactly. And we would like to know...
Well, maybe some thoughts from my side on when it comes to adaptation and mitigation. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the members of that panel for presenting their projects, and to thank the cities of Zaragoza, Oslo, Amsterdam, and Helsinki for having presented these projects that combine adaptation and mitigation and show effectively that it's very difficult to isolate the two dimensions. I mean, we always say that adaptation and mitigation is very much two sides of the same coin. But when I want to tease my colleagues working in the climate adaptation mission, I tell them that to work on mitigation, you still need to be a little bit, let's say, optimistic and have faith in nature, in human nature, and because you fight the system and you think that you can change something. When you work on adaptation, you have given up. You are just going to defend and to adapt to the changes that are coming your way. But that's a joke, of course, because at the end of the day, we cannot really make the difference between the two things. And to a large extent, we have encouraged that in the cities mission, particularly when it comes to the implementation of our program. For instance, from the start of the missions and the cities mission, we have worked together with the climate adaptation mission to develop joint calls addressing research innovation action to address the issues of adaptation and mitigation in the same project. And so we have now quite many projects that combine adaptation and mitigation aspects, research innovation projects, innovation activities that we are managing through a cluster approach. So we have identified that from the start. The other aspect that we have dealt with when it comes to including adaptation in our mitigation strategy or in the mitigation strategy of the cities, and particularly in their climate city contract, is every time a city came forward and said, well, actually, in our climate city contract, we would like to include this dimension, which is admittedly more of an adaptation in nature. We always said, yes, of course you can do it. Please include that project, this initiative, in your strategy for the city's mission, in your climate city contract. And the consequence of that is that when it comes to facilitating the deployment of these projects and identifying investors and investment to support the implementation of those projects, we have also adapted our financial advisory services. And for instance, the Capital Hub, which is the tool that the cities can use to improve the maturity of the projects that they have in their investment plan, is also addressing not only the mitigation projects, but the adaptation projects. And that means concretely a budget transfer from the climate adaptation mission to the cities mission. So we started at low scale, admittedly, a few years ago, where we had 2 million transfer to the Capital Hub to deal with projects of adaptation in the climate city contracts of the cities participating in the mission. And now we have an additional 12 million that have been put on the table to support, again, climate adaptation projects that the cities have identified in their climate city contract. The last point I would like to make, just to show that we are keen supporters of adaptation projects, is that we are also pushing for aggregated projects, projects that combine mitigation projects and adaptation projects, because for an investor point of view, usually adaptation projects are not bankable. So they do not necessarily see the interest of investing on those projects, but if you combine them with projects of a mitigation nature that have a return on investment, then it becomes attractive for investors. So it does facilitate also the deployment and implementation of adaptation projects. Should I give you the floor now? I don't know.
Yes, now it's your turn. Thanks, Philippe. Please, for the contribution. Now, yes, we would like to know from Milenko Sedlar what you're doing from Regia, if I'm saying this well, or pronouncing it the right way, and what you're doing from your side to support the adaptation project, right?
Well, thank you for that, and I'm sorry for the reverse order. It's not mine. Well, you know, Our approach is, from the start, I would say, very systemic, because we did support the city of Zagreb for the Climate City contract, as Philip said, and we did embrace mitigation and adaptation at the same time. But we like to come, to that towards systemically, really, because we see that the three main or the cornerstones of the both mitigation and adaptations are coming from the spatial planning, then from the, I would say, from the fiscal system, or how your budgets are done in the local and regional governance, and then how it is all embedded into the development strategies. So, the most obvious thing that we always do, and what we have, for example, made mandatory, is the climate proofing of the project. So this has, I would say, three main things again. We are climate proofing all the infrastructural projects. So, even the ones that are solo mitigation one, we always assess the climate risks for them, and we are forcing the design of these projects to be climate resilient, according to the duration of the project. The second thing that we also do, we call it the climate proofing of the spatial plans. We use the climate proofing as a buzzword, more of that, but that is also the new way of how to basically design the spatial plans, because we see the spatial plans are actually the tools that local and regional governance, so the cities, have in their hands to plan how to and where to build. Is it going to be resilient or not resilient? Because things can change very, very fast. We've seen in the examples of the cities now. So, spatial plan is one of the biggest tools you have, and if you're not taking into account climate risks and you're not climate proofing your spatial plans, then you can be ending up in huge losses down the stream as your project or infrastructure mature. That is also pretty much related to the critical infrastructure that was also mentioned before on the panel today. The second big thing is that the budgets, I think it is very necessary that the climate action is reflected in the budgets. I would say not in a very traditional way, in terms of how it is usually perceived, that is the budget of the Department for Environment or Climate, but rather, to have the ability to understand how much each and every budgetary line of your budget is actually in line with EU taxonomy, and mitigation and adaptation being 2 out of 6 principles of EU taxonomy, and then the nature and biodiversity additionally 1 more. That's the second big pillar, and the third one, which we are stemming for, and we would like to go into it, but it will take years, that, for example, we are discussing that a city no longer has separate adaptation strategies. City of Zagreb, which we are working for dominantly, that city doesn't have separate climate mitigation strategy, but to have one development strategy. That would actually mean that we've been able and we've been successful to implement, I would say, the transition which is needed in terms of mitigation and adaptation in all sectors. That we have spatial plans that are climate proof, and our fiscal systems are aligned with EU taxonomy, which is, takes a lot of time, but I think that then you can harvest the co-benefits of the approach. You can harvest the co-benefits of mitigation and adaptation being taken together, but not only that, then you can basically move towards making the opportunities. And that is, in today's terms, when talking about the economy and the cuts that, are being seen for the mitigation and adaptation, moving towards changing the macroeconomic narratives and changing the, this from, I would say, being something that we are just addressing into an opportunity for the, different sectors to develop innovation and upscale it for the benefits of economy. This is something that we are, stemming for. So, we try to do it holistically and systemically. It's not always easy, but this is how we do it. And just maybe a bit of a commercial here. So I'm also working for the Mission Adaptation in the project called National Adaptation Hubs. So the project is actually setting up a national adaptation hub in each member state. So those are the organizations that are facilitators of the hubs in each and every member state. It's still an early stage of the project, but they are all working in a way that we are advising from the project level to make the connection with the mitigation, with the NetZeroCities missions, and this is the thing that we see, that there is a potential to make this connection and to work within the multi-level governance scheme to connect better the mitigation and adaptation. Yeah.
Thanks, Milenko. We still have like 10-15 minutes to discuss, so actually I would like to know from your side, but also I would like Philippe and Milenko to intervene when thinking about the future and also the present. What are the barriers that you are encounter when developing and implementing a mitigation and adaptation plan, and see whether also you would share with us any lesson learned or suggestion for the future. Like for instance, housing now, it's a big topic since in a fast-growing city, dense city, actually, we have a lack of housing, and in the same time also the need for preparing the city for be adaptive and resilient. So I would like to know from your side what are the barriers that you encounter from the city that actually have a different socio-geographic position. Please, Susanna, if you would like to start.
Yes, Helsinki, like most of the capital and larger cities, is also a fast-growing city. And Helsinki by land area is small, and it's very interesting about Oslo, the way you are not allowed to build in the forest, and so your land areas is small as well. And so how to combine mitigation and adaptation in a dense city. We have some tools for that to ensure that especially in the new areas there's enough, or we say sufficient green infrastructure in the plots. But in the existing areas, the case gets more complicated. That's why I took the Kaivokatu example, because it's a very existing area and very not very adapted, to say. So how this plan was still successfully approved, even though it was there was some debate before it was approved. But then that type of land use planning, which is, I think, the key to this, to solve this problem in the existing city areas and densely built areas, that's how land use planning can change. But then, of course, it's always a question of resources and also the building for housing. The targets in city are very ambitious, at least for Helsinki, but I think it's everywhere the question. And so far, it's always been, if you talk about mitigation and adaptation, it's been mitigation is the winning part and adaptation is the second. But then I think in the future, with heat waves and heavy rains and etc., then this will change. And we have to start changing our existing areas as well.
Thanks, Susanna. Who go next? Monse, please, go ahead.
Yes. I think that there are different barriers that I think that all the territories can share, like the difficulty when you are doing mitigation and adaptation measures. You need to coordinate not only different sectors, that it's very difficult when you are develop a plan. A plan you may think about mobility, you may think about energy, you think about nature-based solutions, you need to think about green in our city, and this is difficult. This is difficult inside the local governments. It's difficult to coordinate and to implement the measures in the different plans. In the urban plan, that is, I think that is the key of the development of our cities. So this is very difficult, and I think that we still don't have the solution about this. This is a process to learn, to information other departments, and this is difficult. And also it's difficult because, as I said before, the local governments don't have the responsibility of a lot of competence, of a lot of sectors, so we need to travel to work in different levels of government, and this is really, really complicated. And this is in the one hand. In the other hand, we also have maybe the same challenges to have a long-term budget to guarantee these investment plans about mitigation and adaptation. So it's very difficult to change a different way to do our budget. And then we have different barriers about our own characteristics of our territory. In a region, in a Mediterranean region, we have different problems that in other regions of the north of Europe or in the north of Spain. It's different. So we have very, very problems to develop the measures of adaptation, maybe the vegetation. It's difficult when you have water scarcity. This is a very, very huge challenge to above and to study. And also I think that we need to improve our system of data. We need data to monitoring our evolution, and this is also a challenge for our territory. And well, I think that there are the most important barriers in our work.
Thanks, Monse.
Yeah, then maybe to add on what has already been said, I think for the City of Amsterdam, one key challenge will be in the coming years to see if these more integrated approaches that we are trying to develop are able to be translated into also more integrated investment proposals, maybe for the different city departments, but also the other actors that we have within the city, like the Water Management Authority or the grid companies. And if we can bridge that gap, I think that will take us a step further, and I think this also applies to the different government levels, that they maybe also need to work on de-siloing the different budgets in order to actually work towards the best solution in the total perspective. Yeah, and I think another challenge that we will face in the city in the coming years is that in legal aspects, climate adaptation and mitigation are also getting more interconnected. Like some of you might be aware, in the Klimasignorine court case that recently has been developed, you as or at least local authorities in the Netherlands see that those court cases also apply at the local level. And beyond having a duty to work towards climate mitigation, we also have a legal obligation to try and work towards making the city climate adaptive. And if we don't get there in time, we need to also maybe compensate third places. So that's really an interesting perspective that's developing due to the legal precedents that are being applied at different levels.
Thanks, Keith. Drew, please, yes.
Just a couple of points on what we're sort of looking at in Oslo. I think when it comes to housing, whenever you build a new building in Oslo or Norway, anywhere, you're required to manage the stormwater or the extra surface water that building will generate locally on the lot that you're building on. Then we don't really have the capacity to monitor whether or not that is actually happening, but we know that it is happening in most projects. Then, but one thing is that you have that in place. I think the biggest challenge is to make sure that these stormwater solutions are actually being maintained, that the operations that they're working the way they're supposed to. So that a new owner of the building, for example, doesn't just pave over this rain bed, for example, because that makes more sense. And you don't really know that you're then causing water runoff on a different property. So that's a very sort of on the ground issue. I think we need to do a lot in Oslo. We are looking into how to transform existing buildings to provide more housing. But when you do that, when you build new housing units, a lot of new people move in, families move in. Then you have to build schools and kindergartens, etc. And a lot of our discussions with the city sort of contractor, if we can call it that, they say that, but you climate people, you have so many demands. You want renewable energy on the roof, you want stormwater solutions, and we want roofs that are sort of, that they can be used as playgrounds, etc. So it's just a lot of conflicting interests when you're actually putting up a new building. And we don't really have an answer to how to solve that. And then Mons was mentioning financing climate adaptation. So we just got the authority from the national government to introduce a stormwater fee, like you do for sewage and drinking water, etc. But all the other municipal fees are just going through the roof. And so politically, it's very unfeasible to introduce a new fee. So even if we have sort of in theory a funding source, I'm not convinced that this is going to be politically feasible for Oslo to introduce a stormwater fee.
Thanks, Trude. Milenko, Philippe, if you would like just to contribute with some of the thoughts related to...
Yeah, maybe I will just give you an example. We had in past 3 years in Zagreb 2 100-year type of events, meaning extreme weather. And the challenge is now how to build resiliently, because you cannot afford anymore being that housing or being that any type of infrastructure to build it if not resilient. So, and the issue we have is with standards and norms, because they're outdated, they're obsolete, because if you build according to the latest standards, not only Croatian but European, that's not enough. I mean, they told us 3 years ago that winds in Zagreb are not able to surpass 110. We had 130 3 weeks ago. It tore so many roofs, it tore so many power PV plants, it did a lot of damage in housing and a lot of damage in infrastructure. So, you know, we have to really, and we are working into, for example, all the infrastructure, as I said, has to be climate-proof from now on. But what we have imposed is above national level standards, because you have to move faster. Because if you now are building, you're locking in the infrastructure for 50 years or more, I don't know, depending on what you're building, on the current norms and standards which are not enough anymore. So that's a challenge. We have to all build differently. And that's the biggest connection you can actually see between mitigation and adaptation, not only in housing, I think in any type of infrastructure. So just very shortly.
Yeah, thank you. Regarding the next steps, I was thinking, listening to you, that you know that cities that have a climate city contract have the duty to revise those contracts on a regular basis. And I was thinking that we might consider in the future, when you will be in the position to revise and update your climate city contracts, to look a little bit more systematically at the adaptation dimension of the projects. I'm saying that not because I want to be nice to the people dealing with adaptation, but I think politically it makes sense. I mentioned that mitigation projects usually can find investors. Adaptations are actually very popular for citizens and for policymakers. So I think if we increase that dimension in the future iteration of the CCCs, it will be also easier for the policymakers, for the city councils, for the mayors, towards their citizens, to get confirmation that they can still go ahead and maintain their commitment in their projects.
Thanks, Philippe. Well, actually, we still have a couple of minutes. If there's any contribution from the audience or any question. Otherwise, I just would like to thank you all. It seems like we have a shared purpose, different strategy, but definitely the willingness to act and move forward. Thanks, European Commission, for supporting us, RIGEA also for moving forward with these big tools.
And thanks to you, because there are still more people in the room than on stage.
Absolutely. City of Oslo, Zaragoza, Amsterdam. Special thanks to the city of Helsinki for proposing to open this very urgent and needed debate. And thank you. I just want to remind you that the marketplace will stay open for half an hour, and then we will have the dinner at 8 at Combo, and we hope to see you there. Good night.